Hello, once again, everybody, and welcome to Herd Immunity News. I'm Marcus Botzer. Today, we have a fascinating guest that many of you will benefit from listening to. I have with me Mr. Giovanni Di Stefano. Mr. Giovanni Di Stefano, as many of you may well know, was called the devil's advocate, amongst many other things. He is a lawyer and he's represented some very notable clients in Saddam Hussein, Mr. Kenneth Noy. He's also represented Mr. John Palmer, the late John Palmer, Nicholas Van Hoogstraten, and so many others. And he has an incredible story to tell. But before I go any further, let me just say, how are you, Sir Giovanni?
Well, first of all, Marcus, a very, very good morning to you and to all your viewers. And I hope that things will be more enlightening with the current situation in the world with what, we have to discuss today.
Absolutely. I've given a little bit of an introduction to you, but for the benefit of our viewers that may not have seen such things as the BBC documentary that was done about 20 years ago about your life, would you like to just tell them a little bit about yourself, if that's all right?
Well, I am Giovanni Di Stefano, known as the Devil's Advocate. I have 5 children. They're all very, very smart. They're all doing well. Not a single one of them has caused any trouble or issues yet. Uh, I suppose that pleasure we still have to face as parents there. I have been involved in a number of situations, including the situation in the ex-Yugoslavia. For a number of years, I was counselor to the late His Excellency President Milosevic and defended people there. Also, of course, His Excellency President Saddam Hussein and 8 other members of the ruling Ba'ath Party. I regrettably and unfortunately and sadly had to witness 2 executions in 2007 in January, which is something that probably I'll take to the grave with me. And talking about the grave, I'm supposed to have been dead twice already. So, someone said to me, "Why don't you visit your own grave for one?"
Well,
So
you're
according
looking
to the media.
you are looking remarkably well for someone that's no longer with us. But no, you are with us, and as Mark Twain said, the old rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated. But look, you've got an amazing backstory. I will leave the links to all of my viewers at Herd Immunity News so they can read your backstory, because there's just not enough time today. We're looking to chat together for about an hour. And thank you very much again for giving us your very valuable time. It's much appreciated. And it's people like yourself that I think the public will re-examine or cross-examine again to see. There is an old saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And for those of us that have got absolutely no trust in the mainstream media, they may well want to look at your story and exactly what you've got to say. But I don't want to give up too many adages or take up too much the precious time we've got by me talking. But there is a saying by Benjamin Disraeli, the former United Kingdom Prime Minister, that the truth is justice in action, or justice is the truth in action. You're going to shed some light on the situation that's going on right now in Ukraine for us. You are proposing a peace deal, or an amendment you've drafted up, which you've very kindly sent me, as a treaty of non-aggression between the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that's NATO, and its 31 member states, and the Russian Federation. Would you like to go into detail about what your proposals are?
Well, these are not just my proposals. I was asked by certain people, both from the United States and Russia, if there was any way, and I presume that I'm not the only one that was asked, because it's somewhat incredible that I would be the only one in 8 billion people that would have a clue how to draft a peace agreement, having never done one before there. But basically, the situation in Ukraine is one that cannot be sustained any further by all parties there. And everybody, once you start a war, everybody wants a way out. And the first casualty in any war is truth. So we really don't know what the hell is going on there. We see people running around, we see bombs, we see, we have one day this man's killed, then so many. We simply don't know. So what we have to do is go back to the beginning. And I've been in correspondence with His Excellency President Putin for the last 18 months. It's not something new, via a number of different embassies who facilitate. I have met President Putin before in the past. Obviously, being a counselor to President Milosevic during those years, I had access to a number of the Russian diplomats, the foreign ministers and everything there. So, I have a very, very good relationship with the Russian government there. Now, the moment that I drafted, the original draft was about 30 pages, but then I thought to myself, hold on a second, Giovanni, let's go back to MGM. When we had an agreement with Credit Lyonnais Bank Nederland, what would happen if we didn't pay the money back. White and Case, the lawyers in America, drafted 326 pages. So when I read it, I threw it out the window of their office there, and we reduced it to one paragraph. If we don't pay within 2 years, they take the company. So in law, what you have to do in any diplomatic situation is to make things as clear and precise as possible so that there are no misunderstandings, because lawyers are renowned for hitting on one single word, and that then kills the whole deal. I am a deal maker, not a deal breaker. I tell my clients and people what they can do and how to do it, not what they shouldn't do. They already know what they shouldn't do. They don't need to know it. So in the case of Russia and Ukraine, the United States, the European Union, what is fundamentally important is to have what Russia was worried about was the potential of NATO coming up to its borders there. So if you go back and you have a non-aggression pact, which has worked in the past there, you defray all the possibilities of any type of that. Now, yes, you can say, well, they can be breached. Yes, any agreement can be breached, and agreements are breached there. But if we have this situation there, where there is a non-aggression pact between the Russians and NATO, the Ukraine special operation, because remember, it's not a war. People call it a war. The BBC have got it there on their war in Ukraine. It's not. A war is declared by note verbale, where the foreign ministry issues a note to another embassy and says, we have the compliments and greetings, and we herein confirm that the state of war is declared between our two countries. That's never happened in Russia or Ukraine. So there is no war. People need to understand there is no war in Ukraine. There are attacks, there is aggression, there is all sorts, but it's not a war. And the only way of resolving that situation is to have, and it doesn't matter then whether Ukraine comes into NATO or not, because you have a non-aggression pact. It makes no bloody difference whether Finland, whether Norway, whether any of those, it matters not. Russia is not. Instead of fighting Russia, and remember, it's difficult to fight a member of the Permanent Council on the Security Council because they will block everything. It's in the nature. So if they can still get on in New York, why the hell can they not get on worldwide? And so what I devised, instead of 20, 30 pages that I drafted till 3 o'clock in the morning, I tore everything up, started again, and thought to myself, what's the elements that we have? And that has been put to President Putin, it's been put to Biden, and it's been put to Georgia Maloney. Yes. Now, you will no doubt say to me, is there not something missing?
Well, there's plenty missing. There's plenty missing. That there is no appetite for peace whatsoever.
Well, that's not true. That I'm sorry, Marcus.
From the mainstream media, and at the moment from our political leaders. Sorry to interrupt you, Giovanni, but that's what a lot of people are complaining about. That there is nothing. There was a proposal last year. You remember when Mr. Zelensky, his representatives were meeting Mr. Putin's representatives in April, only for the plan to be kiboshed by one Boris Johnson.
Well, we'll deal with Boris Johnson, and that. I have deliberately eliminated the UK government into this deal there for a specific reason. First of all, I believe that the current UK Conservative government couldn't even run a bath, let alone a country. They are about as much use as a comb on Telly Savalas's head. Absolutely futile. So I am not going to, and I told the ambassador in Italy here, the Russian ambassador, under no circumstances should they ever be involved. They are nothing. It's a non-entity, regrettably, because Great Britain was a wonderful country, ruined by few people there at the cost of many. And that's a situation, that you have there. Now, the question of peace, this is not for there to be a peace, there has to be a war. There is no war, so there cannot be a peace. There can only be a consensus ad idem or agreement. A consensus ad idem is a legal term for an understanding of the minds. The understanding is, as I've drafted it, very simple, that it's desirous for there to be peace and tranquility, not in Ukraine or Russia, but worldwide. Yes. It's a template that maybe other countries, the African countries, should be able to consider and take there, if the West allows them, that is, because in Africa, as we know, a lot of the wars there were started by the European allies, poking in and winding people up, and that we have a current situation in Niger that will resolve itself in due course there. But as far as the Ukraine, the moment and the day after I sent it to President Putin, there was a BBC story that Putin all of a sudden was not averse to holding conversations and talks, that he does not want peace with anyone, because peace with that, you have to be at war. He is not at war. He wants an agreement whereby he feels his country is not threatened by 31 others, because 31 against 1 is not really bloody fair there. Having said that, Marcus, let me tell you something about Russia that, people, I keep harping on about this all the time. Russia has 3 times the nuclear capability of the rest of the world put together. 3 times. And yes, that's why they have to be very careful. Now, Vladimir Putin, is not stupid. He's he's not ill. We had stories about him being ill and all of that nonsense and everything there. We have people running around with labels on their back called war crimes prosecutor. All nonsense, ridiculous. Who the hell is going to bring Putin to any kind of tribunal when they've got 3 times the nuclear case? So what you're doing is you're winding people up there, that that the media, with these silly stories, and this they've taken directly from Dr. Goebbels. Now, Dr. Goebbels, in Germany, yes, was an interesting person there. Hitler did not need the SS or the SA to be able to unlawfully and horribly murder Jews and other people, incidentally, there. The people did it themselves, because he put stories out that the Jews were responsible for everything. The people believed it, and they took their own actions. And this is what has become dangerous in our society, where the media, are taking over the role of politicians. In my newspaper, my media outlet, OPC Global News and Media, we report the news. We don't create the news. We report the news. And that is a fundamental difference. And that's something that we need to get back to as part of the media. And it's not a bad idea. I proposed it once, obviously, as a joke, but it's probably not a joke. Every single story in every newspaper should be under penalty of perjury. Hell, you'd have only maybe a paragraph, the obituaries.
Well, that's all very true. And in order for the public to make a balanced decision, a balanced judgment, they must hear the both sides of the story. I don't need to tell you about the court of public opinion, or indeed the court of the judiciary. And I'll echo what you said about the British government. It's hard to think back to the last great prime minister that we had in the United Kingdom. It's arguable that Mrs. Thatcher may well have taken a different approach. I'm sure you've got a different view, but I don't want to get sidetracked on Mrs. Thatcher. But do you think she would have made any difference in this situation?
I met Margaret Thatcher twice at the Dorchester Hotel and at the Savoy there. She used to go for lunch in the Savoy, and now and then, people would go and shake her hand. And I was one of the people with with an ex MP. You know, we went over and she, you know, she
Yeah.
said, "Please sit at my table." So we had an interesting conversation. That's one hell of a woman there. And at that time, when she was prime minister, I'm guilty. There we go. I have to plead guilty. I have to violate the 11th commandment, "Thou shalt not plead guilty," which Moses forgot to bring down because it was
Well,
oversubscribed. That
yes.
I, you know, funded the Tories with £26,000. You know, gave them that at that time there. Now that was, I'm not telling you anything new because that was
Mm,
reported in the Sunday Times by my friend Tom Walker, who sadly is no longer with us. But there, she was an incredible woman, and
mm,
who knows how she would have dealt with it. One thing is for certain: Europe and the rest of the world are being starved. You know, the citizens are being punished. Inflation is at its highest, all because we have taken a side of that, and that is wrong. I believe that Russia, and I've told the authorities in Russia, the Russian government, I've told the ambassador, it is wrong to have started that special operation, but it was started for a
mm.
specific reason. You have to look at what Zelensky, President Zelensky, His Excellency, has also done. He's closed radio stations down. He's
Yes.
violated agreements. He's revoked, you know, all sorts of election results
Religious
there
worship.
unilaterally. You know, so there's a little bit of like half a dozen one and six of
Mm,
the other here there. So Putin was worried as to what would become of his Russian citizens, people who, you know, had a
yes.
Russian heritage there. So he took the unilateral decision, rightly or wrong, and no one did anything about it years ago.
Mm,
The West did nada, nothing. Now, if I were to attack you and no one in your office there does anything about it, it means that either they support me and they think, bloody hell, that's a good job he's done that,
mm.
or they don't want to get involved. So why get involved now? Why, Putin was threatened
Yes.
with an expansion of NATO. The only way to defray that
Mm.
is to have an agreement where there's non-aggression.
Well,
It's resolved. The problem's resolved that way. You
this
don't
goes.
need peace talks.
Sorry to interrupt, but this goes back to the Minsk agreement, which a lot of people
Correct.
have chosen to forget completely. Giovanni, on the Minsk agreement was precisely that, to stop the expansionism of both European Union application and also NATO, joining NATO. So that's come off the table now. No one wants to talk about the Minsk agreement, do they?
Nobody wants to talk about anything which is against, which supports. I don't support. Look, in Italy, our constitution repudiates war and violence, Article 10 of our constitution. So I'm very conscious of that. I am a person that, repudiates, any form of, I don't think I've had a fight in my life in 68 years yet, but then I apply the policy. If you want peace, you have to be ready for war. By golly gosh, I'm ready if
Mm.
anyone were to that. But, we try to avoid, we try to deal with, we talk things out. And mostly it's resolved in that fashion. We had a similar situation, in 1999, in Yugoslavia there, where certain things were happening, and I put a stop to it by conversations rather than by violent means, which was at the time at everybody's disposal there. I hate violence. I hate war. I hate any form of racism. I hate any form of discrimination. It is an antithesis for me. I just totally deplore that. It's not within my I have nothing against the British government,
Sure.
because they, as far as I'm concerned, they are non-entities. To use
Absolutely.
Van Hoogstraten's own words.
Yes, well, Mr. Van Hoogstraten was also a fan of Mrs. Thatcher, which
Correct.
I would recommend that anyone who's interested in politics look at his appearance on a fabulous show called After Dark, which, when we had free speech or free air speech in the United Kingdom, I don't know if you actually saw the show yourself. I know he's a dear friend of yours, but he gave a fantastic case for capitalism. He gave a great case for creation of wealth, and he was a fan of Mrs. Thatcher's, like yourself. But things have gone too far now. The people that are in charge are merely puppets. The Rishi Sunak regime, for many, even the Conservative voters didn't want him. He couldn't even beat Liz Truss. Giovanni.
Well, Liz Truss, we had a problem with that will. I mean, as I put on on Twitter, if it's still called Twitter, or is it called X now? Well, that's another thing. We don't really know what it's called, because you now post instead of tweet. So and I have met Mr. Musk in Rome at the Eden Hotel there.
Oh,
So
right.
so that's another interesting thing there. We simply, there is no free speech anymore. The moment that you say something, can you just imagine Alf Garnett, "Till death us do part," or "Love thy neighbor" coming on today? I mean, you only have to say a wrong word and you lose your job, or that. I mean, yes, I came in 1961 into the United Kingdom from Italy. I was an Itai, a Wog, a spaghetti-eating swab, yellow, my army marches backwards. But here I am, yes, I didn't like it. It's not very nice, but no one threw any stones at me or anything like that, and it shouldn't have happened. It would have best have, and I never retaliated, and I got that as an Italian. A Scottish guy, Hugh McCullough, who was my, school friend, woo, he got beaten every single day. His was worse because, and I couldn't understand how a United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland was more racist against the Scots than they were against the Italians.
Well, that's right. And I'm from Italian heritage, as maybe not all of my herd immunity news followers may know. Proudly, I may add to that. And the Italians were put into internment camps. Their businesses were shut down. The shop front windows were smashed in, even buildings set on fire and personal attacks. And they never complained. They said, we're at war. We've allied with Germany. And they opened up their fish and chip shops again, their cafes, their tailor shops, their clothing, everything, you name it. And they contributed and they got on with it. And they're fantastic members of the British community. Sure, you'll agree with that.
I agree entirely with that there, because obviously my uncle was also a prisoner of war. He worked at Saxby's in Urchafandish, and he had a tied cottage, and he sponsored. See, in 1961, my father, me and my mother, my father came 2 years earlier. You had to be sponsored to come to the United Kingdom. There had to be a reason. Why do you want to come here? What are you going to contribute? Not what you're going to get. What are you going to contribute? And the contribution had to be a 4-year contract, working 6 days a week for £4 a week there. We had to sign on every Saturday at the police station at 3 p.m. We did nothing wrong. And I was a little boy. I couldn't understand it, why I had to be dragged, that. But it worked. The situation worked. The people who came to the United Kingdom integrated people like you, people like me. You were born, you have Scottish and Italian, heritage. You integrated into a society. And let me tell you, you would easily integrate also in Italy, because you have been trained to integrate there. Now, the problem at the moment in the UK is that British people can't integrate in their own country, because it's been swarmed with so many other people. And I know I get slagged off by people there, but in my political party, Partito Nazionale Italiano, there, we have a policy on immigration. Everybody is welcome, providing they have a visa and they've applied in advance. If you break into our country, it is a criminal offence. If I break into your home, it's a criminal offence. It's burglary. I'll go to prison for 2 to 4 years, whatever. So what the hell is the difference between breaking into your house or your country? You've broken into there. You've got the means available. Now people will say asylum. Asylum from what? Asylum from what? Tell me one country. Now you say, well, Iran, for example, they don't allow people not to have their, the women to that. That's the country. That's their law. That's their legislation. By accepting people who refuse their own laws, what are they going to do with your laws when they come here? They're going to run roughshod over it. So I am 100%, my party are 100% for immigration, providing it is lawful and legal and approved in advance. We welcome everybody, but we will not. And in Italy, Giorgia Meloni, who in my party supports as well. I mean, remember, she would, Fratelli d'Italia was only had 3%, a few months back. Now they're running the country. So, that's an important issue there. On prisoners, for example, we give 2 years off for foreign nationals and kick them out. There's no recourse, no nothing, out. You've committed an offence, you've broken your visa agreement, even if you didn't have a visa, you've broken the conditions of coming to my home. If I come to your home and steal from your bedroom,
Absolutely.
I've broken the trust that you've put into me. So why can it not be applied? There's not racism, it's not being anything, it's normal.
Absolutely. It's nothing to do with the criteria of the color of your skin or your religion. It's
Nada.
basic criteria. I know that Australia issues bridging visas, right? Until such times as they can be sure that you meet the criteria for citizenship for the safety and security of the residents who are already there. But the United Kingdom isn't even interested in this.
Well, it's not interested, you know, because we now have to deal with foreign national prisoners, something that's going to alarm your viewers. You know, I've found the statistics. There are 18,400 foreign national criminals in the United Kingdom, of which just over 10,000 are in prison. Hell's bells.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on? Why is this being allowed there? The biggest contingency are Albanians, Romanians, and Polish. They're the three big contingencies of foreign national criminals in the United Kingdom jails. Now, let me tell you, the rest are out on bail or awaiting a decision from the Home Office. So you've got basically 50-50. You've got over 10,000. It's easily resolvable, that problem.
Yes.
The problem, 70% of them want to go back. Now, what the government have done is, under Section 260 of the Criminal Justice Act 2003, said the original was to have 4 months off your sentence if you F off,
right?
You know, voluntarily. The second, then they changed the law to 270 days, and recently it was changed again to 1 year. But to apply that, I had to go to court and force the prison service to apply it. And, you know, because the law was there, but they said, oh, we haven't got this, we haven't got the staff, we haven't got that, Home Office haven't got this, all the excuses under the sun. The actual reality is that they don't want foreign national prisoners to go back, because if they wanted to, they could do what the Italians do and what others do. You know, the moment you finish, the moment you are sentenced, you are given a release date of -2 years, and on that day you leave. Now, what Britain does is completely opposite. They wait till you finished your sentence, and then they start the process for deportation. Absolute folly, madness. Suella Braverman, leaving aside that, you know, she's never that good at KC, even if she made the grade for that in the first place. You know, that I personally wouldn't let her represent me with a parking ticket. But, you know, but having said that, I like Suella a lot.
Yeah.
But she's not for that job there. It's not for her. That needs someone like Kenneth Clark, you know, someone who understands the situation. He's, you know, he's gone now. He's too old now. But someone of that nature. You have no heavyweights anymore in the United Kingdom. Yeah. You have no politicians. You have people who practice politics, but no politicians there.
Well, that's absolutely right. So I was just going to say, even under Labour, and many of us on the Conservative, most of our viewers are of Conservative minded to the centre right, but we welcome everybody. We're a broad church here at Herd Immunity News. Even under Labour, they were deporting up to 50,000 people a year. But this lot, they have absolutely the game's up, cards on the table. They're not interested at all. This is part of a deep state operation to flood the United Kingdom and Europe with as many internationals as possible. Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, they want to, if you have a confused society, go back to the Elizabethans, it's body politics. They have to have a head. If you have a confusion, if you look at any Shakespeare's plays, when there's confusion, everything falls, the whole administration falls. So if you start having a lot of different diverse people in your country, you know, and then you start giving them the right, you know, to vote and everything there, you won't know what the hell, you know, they'll believe anything. There, and that is a major problem. We in Italy will not stand for that there. My political party, Partito Nazionale Italiano, Fratelli d'Italia, Forza Italia, that. I don't care what the PD and what the left do. I mean, that's their business. But we will not allow people to enter our homes without an invitation. We have no problem throwing a party for 3 million, but you have to be invited to that. You don't go to people's weddings uninvited. You have to be invited. Britain has adopted this policy, and it is catastrophic.
It is.
And it's going to cost them. Look at your interest rates have gone up to almost 6%. 6 months ago they were nothing.
It's out of control. Out of control. Completely out of control. And they talk about they were worried. They used this narrative that, oh, if we don't stop Mr. Putin, he's going to push west to take over the UK. They're coming on bloody boats. We don't know who they are. He could have his own private army here.
That's right. There. And talking of President Putin, Russia's economy is booming.
Exactly. He's doing well out of this, isn't he? It's a nice little
He's doing very, very well, because, he has the product and people are forced into buying it. And what the politicians are doing is they're starving the people. And I will not stand for it. I will keep on saying, and that is why the NATO Russian non-aggression memorandum consensus addendum is
no, please
the way ahead, because nobody wins and nobody loses.
Yes, I mean, I'm looking at the document that you've kindly sent us here, and we will make this available to everybody to have a look at, with your permission, of course. If we have your permission,
you have my permission. It's a it's something.
I want to be clear on that.
No, that's yeah.
Crossing the devil's advocate
of the law, do you?
Well, I don't want to come follow the devil's advocate, sir, Senor. I'd like to be on good terms with you, but if I may just read a little bit out of Article 1, it says both high contracting parties obligate themselves to desist from any act of violence, any aggressive action, and any act on each other, either individually or jointly with other powers.
Correct. You've hit the nail. That's it in a nutshell. That resolves Ukraine straight away. It doesn't matter then whether Ukraine comes into NATO. And incidentally, why the hell did it not join years back? It's been asked 7 times to join, and it refused to join. It was asked to join the European Union and didn't want to. Now all of a sudden it wants to. That. And we from the European Union, we would welcome. We have no problems with that. But before anyone else joins that borders Russia, we need a pact. We need an understanding of non-aggression. That way, there is no threat to anyone. It doesn't matter who the hell joins then.
Sure. I mean, what do you think of the appointment of Ursula von der Leyen? She's the former, for anybody that doesn't know, she's the former EU president. She's also a former German defense minister. She hasn't got the best track record as the German defense minister. But what do you think of that appointment, Giovanni?
I met her in the beach in Capalbio some years back.
Lovely.
She has, I think, 6 or 7 children. I mean, in a very, very capable woman. Anybody who can have so many children and run the household efficiently, shouldn't have too big a difficulty in sorting men out.
So you have faith in her, despite her desire for more money for the war.
That's just complete, total folly. There is no war.
All right,
there
the
has
conflict.
to be a war first before you can have money for a war. If anyone is putting money into any fund or any collection or any charity which uses the word war, it is unlawful and it is misrepresentation and potential fraud.
So we'll use another word. We'll use aggressive conflict.
Special operation.
Special operation.
It's a special, which should never have happened, incidentally. So let me make it clear. I am against that in the first place. That was a last, when you keep prodding, a docile dog, you keep prodding, eventually it's going to bite you. So he just had enough. There were threats that there would be this, that, and the other threats against its citizens. What would happen if France, for example, in Corsica, launched, aggressive that against Sardinia, which is what it's basically bought? There'd have to be something, eventually something would have to be done. The Italians would have to send the military into Sardinia and confront the French. I mean, at some stage. that. So that's what you're basically having, that kind of situation.
Mm.
There were conflicts within the border zones between, Russia, that there were Russian citizens in northern Italy. In some of the villages and towns, the official language is not Italian, it's German.
Mm.
Now, that we've and how to overcome that. We've given them special status, the regions up in north where
Sure.
they can have their land. That's so you make it legal. But Zelensky wasn't having any of it. He didn't want to participate. So that's what he got in return. There comes to a point when if you try and talk to someone and he doesn't listen, you have to take a different approach. But I repudiate war, repudiate violence.
Okay.
That was not the way that His Excellency President Putin, he was forced into that position, which should never have happened.
Well, thank you for assisting me, because as you said at the very outset of this, words are essential, detail is essential, and the way that we'll find a resolution to this conflict is, as your document suggests, through arbitration. Now, onto that, President Trump has recently come under fire from the mainstream media. Surprising as it sounds, Giovanni, he's under threat by the likes of the BBC, CNN, and all and sundry. He said that he could solve this situation in 24 hours. Do you believe him?
I tell you how. I don't know Donald Trump well, but I've met him on a few occasions there. But I can't say that I know him well. But I have met him on a few occasions, and his wife Melania as well. You know how he would solve it? He wants to come out of NATO. That's how he solves it. You come out of NATO,
Yeah.
Russia aren't scared of bugger all anymore. Nada. Not scared of nothing.
Yeah, they'd have Mr. Macron to deal with.
And that's how he would solve it. And, he was refusing to pay, when he was president, a lot of the accounts that the United States had to pay to NATO. There was a point where the NATO coffers were in trouble there because he wanted certain assurances. He could not understand, and I cannot understand, do we actually need NATO? Part of my political party's ideology and our program is that we want to disband NATO because we don't need it. We've got the European Union, got 29. We're almost the same number as NATO countries. Thank God that Britain's got out of it, because that's another pain in the neck. That's less to worry about, But
I agree. I'm happy about that as well.
Do you need NATO? Do you need NATO? We don't need NATO. It's not necessary. We needed it after the war to have a form of peace. And the mistake that was made by Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt, was that they didn't include Russia within a kind of pact there. They included many other things and many corporations in Berlin and other places there and in Germany and that. But the real coy was that they should have included Russia. And the Russians have always, felt aggrieved at not being part of that because just imagine one of Erkan's, had he not been murdered, he would have become president of Serbia, and I would have been his foreign minister there in the Stranka Srpska Jedinstva, the Serbian Unity Party there.
This is your client that you're talking about, friend.
That's right.
Friend
He was
former
murdered.
International Hotel.
That's right there. But him and his party Stranka Srpska Jedinstva, the Serbian Unity Party, part of the ideology was for Serbia to come under a NATO umbrella. You wouldn't get attacked then. We wanted part of that. It still wants part of that. The Council of Europe, the original draft for the Council of Europe in Serbia, I did it with Foreign Minister Jovanovic. I suggested it that's what we do. We go under the Council of Europe's umbrella, then they can't attack us. But we were just a little bit too late. And had Erkan not been murdered, by whoever murdered him, and I have my own sort of
of course,
my own views on how that was achieved. It certainly wasn't done by the person who's in prison for it. There, that was a security service, involvement there. and a specific reason. It had nothing to do with war crimes, nada. It was to do with political ideology. Milorad Dodik is now out of favor in Serbia. He was in favor before when he became president of Republika Srpska, the Bosnian Federation there. Now he's out of favor because he wants to succeed. He wants to have his own country there. But he was the darling of the West at the time. Erkan would have been a fantastic president because he told me one thing that was interesting. He said, Giovanni, I had two uncles, one in America and one in Russia. The one in Russia was always asking for money and goods and for my father and mother to send him stuff to Moscow. Right. The one in America would always send us stuff. He said, who the hell do you think that I'm going to support? Think I'm going to support the Russians or I'm going to support, the West? So he had a Western approach, and that Western approach would have integrated the Balkans, reduced any potential conflict instantly. But no, that wasn't good enough for the British. The British didn't want that. They like war. They like people fighting against each other because at the end of the day, they come in and try and rebuild your country, which is what they're trying to do already in Ukraine. They already sent businessmen there for the rebuilding program and everything there, and thinking stupidly that the Moscow Narodny Bank and other Russian banks is going to fund it.
So much of it
fund nothing.
Indeed, sir. So much of this depends on the election next year in the United States of America, therefore, and that you fancy, like me, the chances of this situation between NATO and Russia, it will be solved under Trump. He's currently facing, I think it's 78 indictments altogether. What's going to happen there, Giovanni, and your expert, if we can ask for your expert legal opinion on the Trump situation?
There's more chance of President Trump going to prison than Patriarch Pavlin marrying the Pope. There is absolutely zero chance whatsoever. He's not going to go to prison. It is a politically motivated prosecution there, and it is something that America needs to straighten itself out. You have 3 or 4, I think it's 4 million people in prison in America. Do you really think they need a Donald Trump? And incidentally, even if he did go to prison, nothing stops him being president. There's nothing in the Constitution which says that a president who's gone to prison, to the best of my knowledge, there. And that would be interesting, to run it from Sing Sing or to run it from Alcatraz or wherever the hell they would. But that's not going to happen. That's wishful thinking there. And what needs to happen quickly is for America to reconcile itself with itself, because what actually is America? Did you know that but for one vote in the Congress, the language spoken in America would be German and not English? By one vote. Wow. You didn't know? Maybe know that.
That's remarkable. That's a remarkable.
By one vote, they would be speaking German, the whole of that, instead of English. Now they speak, part of the language is Spanish, of course, because they've allowed an infiltration of Mexicans to come in. And in that respect, I do understand the border, but it's not just a physical border. It is a cultural border, a financial border. It is an ideological border, a community border. You can't just do what the British did after the First World War, which is why, you have Lawrence of Arabia complaining, draw lines in Africa and say, that's what you're going to, there's your, can't be done that way. And by doing that, it's created a massive problem in the aftermath. And the only reason that Colonel Gaddafi, who I knew very well, and I took instructions from him, and that the only reason they killed him and made sure he was killed is because he wanted a United States of Africa with the Afro dollar. Did you know, for example, that in Libya, during his reign, free education from the age of 0 to when you finished university, providing you did your trade in Libya, then you can't just F off and go away to another country and apply as a doctor. And you had free healthcare, totally free. If you were it was one of the best healthcare systems. He wanted a United States of Africa with the Afro dollar as its currency, which was a direct challenge to Washington, a direct challenge to the United Kingdom, and a direct challenge to France. Not so much Italy, because we have links, obviously, with the Libyans. There we have links with the Somalian as well, there. But that was fundamentally why he had to die. He had to be replaced. And no one gave a flying Ferrari, for not to say another word, about the consequences of the people on the ground, because that is the type of perpendicular ponces that you have running government in different parts of the world at the moment.
Well, that's right. And a lot of people will be looking to opinions like yours because these have been redacted out of society, even looking at Russian television. That's been taken out of play completely. And it's more evidence to put to the jury to say that it's time that they look at the fringes. More people are going on to social media now than ever, as you well know, Giovanni. They've really washed their hands off the likes of the BBC, the same people that did a hatchet job, if you don't mind me saying, on you. The Devil's Advocate, which I've mentioned before, is well worth everybody having a watch to really see what you did to them. I mean, you won cases, very high profile cases, if we can talk about this for just a second, on your Mr. Van Hoogstraten and Mr. Palmer cases. I think at the time
I didn't win, they lost. By making mistakes. I didn't win by making stupid mistakes, being highly paid and so-called highly qualified, high octane lawyers. They made the basic elementary mistakes. So I did not win. They lost through their own stupidityness and their own folly, and they're not checking. Let me tell your viewers what I believe in: A, B, C, and try and remember this. Accept nothing, believe therefore, and check everything. A, B, C. Accept nothing, believe therefore, and check everything. If you follow those guiding principles, you will not go wrong as a prosecutor or defense lawyer or doctor or architect or journalist or anything. Because by not checking your work, according to the internet and according to the news, I died on the 29th of March 2018. That's and right. Again on the 8th of May 2020. But here I am talking to you. Or maybe this is an afterlife. Maybe I really did that. Maybe we just in some sort of cosmic state that you don't really die. Maybe people don't really die. Maybe they sort of think they die and they just carry on in some other form. But it's the same bloody form, and it's the same GDS, and it is the same Devil's Advocate.
Well, that's well put, and I like the way you presented that. You didn't win; they lost through neglect, through arrogance, maybe through
the arrogance of office. Isn't that in the Hamlet speech? The arrogance. I think I did that. To be or not to be, that is. I did that in my recitations for the Sorbonne University. That's an interesting thing for people to listen to. Look, go onto SoundCloud and put that and listen to my recitations, because they are an important part of literature, and words
absolutely
govern our memories, without which we have nothing.
Absolutely. Nada. And the importance of the courts, the importance of representation, the importance of a sound, strong defense are essential.
Impartial
defense.
Judiciary. We don't have that. Let me say it now to the viewers. The Court of Appeal Criminal Division in the United Kingdom is and has been for a number of years intellectually dishonest. They are intellectually dishonest, at times totally dishonest. Cases that they know that should be quashed, conviction should be quashed, they refuse point blank to entertain, finding some obscure situations in doing that there. And that is wrong. The whole point of the Court of Appeal Criminal Division, which was formed in 1907, as I've told many of the judges, it was there to do justice. It wasn't there to do law. It is the Royal Courts of Justice. It is not the Royal Courts of Law. That's what's on their building, Royal Courts of Justice. So justice is an ideal in the minds of men, but you have to restrict that. You have to put that into a binary tract, which lead to applying the law as one of the judges told me, well, Giovanni, you know, we apply the law for the mass and we interpret it, you know, for our friends, which is exactly what happens there. They are intellectually dishonest. And what is required is to have a parliamentary commission analysing every single decision in the last 10 years of the Court of Appeal and looking at exactly where they have gone, because they have gone wrong. And what they do is that they integrate new judges into their system. And so you have a revolving intellectual dishonesty going, you know, round and round and round. And the young judges who, you know, who step into the onto the bench there are chosen specifically for those who will be compliant to the system. They do not want people to get off. They don't want people to win their appeals. Only 2% of appeals are actually, you know, successful. That is too low. It is disgraceful, and it is something that needs to be addressed.
The statistics came out the other day, Giovanni. The 95% of crimes are unsolved. Did you know that?
Well, I knew that they were unsolved simply because they don't have the capabilities and manpower, because they're too busy trying to stitch people up. That people like Terry Smith, people like, you know, Palmer, I mean, like, you know, people like Bamber. Jeremy Bamber definitely did not kill anyone. He couldn't have killed anyone there. He passed his lie detector test, which stupidly the governor of HMP Full Sutton only allowed me to carry out because he thought he would fail it and that would put an end to everything. But he passed it. He was asked on 5 separate occasions, did you kill your mum? Did you kill your dad? Did you kill your sister? Did you kill your, you know, your nephew? I mean, we're talking about 5 questions on murder. You might be able to hoodwink them on 1, but you certainly to hell can't hoodwink them on all 5. All 5 passed.
So you say Bamber is innocent? You're saying Bamber is
100%, a billion% innocent there. We showed, I represented him for 6 years. You know, we showed the crime scene photo of Sheila Cathal with blood coming out of her neck there where she'd been shot. And that was taken at 10:25 a.m. Anyone knows anything about blood loss and, you know, and coagulation, it's a 2-hour maximum, 2 hours. You know, if you're shot or you're killed or you're stabbed, within 2 hours, blood stops coming out. That was still pouring out, which means he couldn't have done it. It was with the police from 3 o'clock.
What is the prosecution's answer to that?
Nothing. They don't give a flying anything. They don't care. The Essex police have refused to disclose over 500,000 pieces of evidence in that case. We can't get disclosures out. And where's the video when the police entered the house? That's disappeared. Why was there a police officer, the detective inspector, who actually believed Jeremy Bamber? On one occasion, he was painting his house. He climbed the ladder. He fell off the ladder and dropped dead. What a coincidence. And the person who took over was the person that then made sure that Bamber would be convicted there. And the reason for that is that it is much better, much better if you have one innocent person inside than a person who hasn't been caught in the community who's killed 5 people. The community gets scared. So the government have to weigh up, what do we do? What do we care about Bamber? Who the hell is he? He's only been an adopted boy anyway. There, and that is wrong principle. Britain needs to restore itself and restore its pride. You need to go back to the case of Dr. Bodkin Adams and Mr. Justice Devlin. Bodkin Adams was a GP who definitely murdered his patients, but he was acquitted on the law. And Devlin said it is much better that we have guilty person go free than an innocent person go in. Look, that policy has eroded and died in England in the same way that the United Kingdom, for my purposes and many others, has died.
It did seem that you were the go-to guy when it came to the high-profile cases that seemed to be indefensible. And I've never liked that term, indefensible. Everyone's defensible. It's arrogant and it's lazy to say that no one is entitled to defense. It's actually disgusting. But you seem to be the man. If you go back to even the 90s, through the 90s, they all wanted to come to you. Why were you such an attractive option to these high-profile cases?
Well, it's not because of my good looks, because that I don't have. But my young son did say to me when he was 8 years of age, he said, "Dad, how did you manage to pull Mum when she's beautiful and you're ugly?" So,
well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. To many of our followers, you may be a beautiful human being. let's not.
I know what was the phrase in English? He knows his onions. I use the law, apply the law,
Sure.
and make sure. But it's difficult now. The Court of Appeal, as I said, are intellectually dishonest. Would I win Van Hoogstraten and Palmer today? No.
No.
They would find a way around it. They almost tried to find a way around it with the case of Simpson afterwards in Palmer's case, but it was too late because the bird had already flown. We'd already won and succeeded. But they closed the door on the loophole. So if the prosecution make a mistake, it doesn't really matter. What I told the judge there was, they said, well, he said to me, well, Mr. Di Stefano, what difference does it make what document, whether it was section 72 or 72A of the Criminal Justice Act? I said, it makes this difference. If you want to divorce your wife, and I knew that the judge was in the process of divorcing his wife.
Right.
If you want to divorce your wife and you serve her with a landlord and tenant eviction, well, we all know you meant to be a divorce petition. Who cares what document is served upon you? And that's how we won.
Well,
look, important, the documents.
It was an amazing case, and I recommend any of our followers that haven't seen the documentary, The Devil's Advocate, and to read up on you. We will leave links to your website, of course, because there's just not enough time. I mean, 60 minutes, it would need to be like the Beatles anthology to do the whole life story of Giovanni from day of birth, from your humble origins over there in beautiful.
Well, that is happening. That is happening. There is a TV company that is doing looking at 8 seasons with 10 episodes per season, not just exclusively on me, but some of my clients, because that's so each episode will have one of my clients' story in it, and that's how they've sold it. You also have The Man with the Golden Glasses, of course. That is a 90-minute movie that has been optioned by a very, very famous
were they Cartier, Giovanni? Those glasses, were they Cartier from Harrods?
They were Bugatti.
Oh, Bugatti! Forza Italia.
Yeah, that I'm very, very hard to come by now, and I do still have them there. I will wear them now and then, and I will certainly wear them, at the Venice Film Festival on the 1st when I'm going with Jim Sheridan to present the documentary that him and Donald McIntyre are doing on me, which will be different to the Sky documentary, which was complete crap, total. I mean,
a stitch-up job.
It's not the stitch-up. I mean, they spent over £1 million on that. It's factually inaccurate.
Right.
I mean, the police officer, I feel sorry for the judge, the police officer, and 2 of the witnesses that died under very mysterious circumstances of their own hand, incidentally, there. The judge, McCreath, wrote me a letter before he died. He was then a member of the parole board. He resigned from the bench early and went to the parole board. He sent me a letter saying that we are both victims in this venture, except that you were the sacrificial lamb in a drunken wolf party. Those words are haunting and frightening.
Sure.
And he basically, died. And Alistair McCreath was for my purposes, was a great guy. So was Jerry Walters there. But they had their own conscience, and that's raises my thing. And in Julius Caesar, and thus doth conscience make a coward of us all.
Well, that's beautifully recited. And as you point out, a country is only as good as its legal system. And if you don't
ours has gone downhill.
Well, there you go. If it's either tainted, blighted, corrupted, then it's not worth a jot. And I think that's why the eyes.
A parliamentary commission, to revitalise and to look into the purpose. What is the purpose of sentencing? I invite the viewers to look at Section 142 of the Criminal Justice Act 2003. It's covered. It's completely obliterated. The judges pay no attention to it. I often, say, please look at the purpose of sentencing. Section 142 of the Criminal Justice Act. When you come off air to me, have a look at it, and you'll see that it's completely gone, disappeared. Britain, unfortunately, is as dead as I'm supposed to be, and it needs to, go and visit its own grave before it can be revitalized. And on that note,
we shall thank you very much indeed for your precious time.